clients. Jackie is a local, well-known lawyer, and I interviewed him in Life Stories Remembered. And in the interview, he said, I have a picture of my grandfather in my office. I never met him. I never heard his voice. I don't know anything about him or his life, and I don't know anything about his parents and his grandparents. That information's lost forever. And he said, I don't want my children and grandchildren to be in that situation in the future. And that's why he
said it really well, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He did. And it's
as you're talking, the other service that I think that you are providing is that you are listening to people.
Yeah.
And that's huge. I think the biggest gift that anyone can give anyone else is to listen to them. And you are doing that. You are listening. You obviously craft your questions carefully, and then you listen to the answers, and you not only listen to the answers, but you record them and send them back. So, it isn't just recording the life, but you're giving people the honor and the dignity and the appreciation of listening to them. And for some people, that doesn't happen a lot in their lives. So, there's two pieces that you're doing when you're doing the work that you're doing. And I think that's a big deal.
And that's where I see it as a gift that a person is giving to themselves as well as giving to others. So I agree with that.
Yeah, and I would bet if you look back that a lot of your own life growth and experiences has taught you how to be very good at doing that.
I think you have to have a healthy respect for people and for their life stories, and you have to go into that kind of an interview recognizing that everybody's gone through something, and nobody misses out on difficult times in their lives. It's part of living, and to actually give people an opportunity to see that what they have done and what their lives have been are of great value.
So is your community aware of what you're doing with your business? I mean, I would think you're strengthening your community as well.
Yes, they certainly are aware, and some of the leaders of our community have really wanted me to target certain people who they knew were up in years and did have important information to share. And so they've been very supportive of me and have gone out on their own and said, I think this is something important, and Anne can give you an opportunity to do it. So that's been very helpful.
Oh,
so yes, the community has been very supportive.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, it sounds like they can see the depth of the gift that you give to your clients, and then turn around, as you say, in return and give it to the community as well. Because communities don't know these stories of some of their people. As you say, founders or people that have had multi-generational businesses in the community, or people who have contributed back to the community. They don't know the story. We only kind of see people when they're finally a big success and write that huge check to the parks department or the kids support or something like that, and they have no idea what it took to maybe build their business to the point where they're that successful, or build their life to the point where they've been that financially successful and they can give back, and we tend to think maybe they did it easily.
Area, you go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking of this conference I was at, they were honoring a man as Entrepreneur of the Year, and he told his story. He's got an ambulance company, and I think he's now got 700 ambulances that operate somewhere on the East Coast, I think up in New England, and he started telling the story of starting that business it was him and his wife, and they were at their kitchen table, and how long they did it that way, and and now it's probably 30 years later, it's become a very successful business, and I was so appreciative of him telling the story of how he started it and how he saw a need and really wanted to serve his community, and how it grew from there, and now he employs all of these people, and because I think sometimes people think that just he was lucky, and instead he talks about all the work that it's taken to make this happen and how he's giving back now. And see, that's what your stories can do. They can make that switch.
It takes work, and there's always risks. And
always risk.
And those are very important parts of recognizing doing something like this before you get into it. But in our community, we have a unique situation. In 1972, Hurricane Agnes came through this community. I was not living here then, and totally destroyed the whole community.
Wow.
Thousands and thousands of people lost their homes, lost their businesses. It was a really terrible time. And in the process of that, people lost photographs and any old letters that might have been written to them by family members, or anything that speaks to about their ancestors. They were gone. So in addition to all the other reasons why preserving life stories is important, in this particular community, it is even more so because there are no concrete things you can look at and say, oh yes, that was my grandmother, that was my great grandmother.
Wow.
So that makes it a little bit unique. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, Anne, you just seem to have a gift for getting people to talk openly and honestly with you. So, what do you think you do that's so special and builds that rapport and trust with people?
Well, I think the first thing is I love doing it, and I think that's another thing you mentioned in your book. I think it's really important, and so in many ways it's not work for me. It's very much a part of who I am, and my training certainly has helped me. But I think it's really the fact that I really love what I do, and I have a healthy respect for others and how they've conducted their lives.
I think that piece is also true, that you have. I hear that in your conversation, that you are very respectful. I mean, what you said is that every person has a story. Every person has had hard times. You know, every person is worthy of talking about their life and telling their story to the rest of us. So I think people must pick that up pretty quickly from working with you.
And I think I also have a natural curiosity about how did you get here. I know even just socially sometimes I hear myself say to somebody, well, you know, why did you move here? Or why did you go into that kind of business? What interested you about it? So it's sort of a natural curiosity that I have.
Yeah, without being judgmental. You're just curious and interested. Yeah. So, you know, we talked a little bit about encore entrepreneurs. You certainly meet that definition. You know, there's 100 million people in the country over the age of 50, and a huge number of them are interested in starting businesses for just the reasons that you named, you know, because they're healthy. We are experiencing what is being called the longevity bonus. Never before in human history have there been so many people who have healthily reached the age of 50 plus and, you know, are looking ahead at having another 30 years ahead, maybe 40 years if you're 50. You know, if you're 65, we're talking about 25 to 30 years ahead of good life, and people are thinking, what'll I do, you know, with that time? And so they're looking for ways to start businesses, and the statistics that we get is that there are more businesses being started by those over 50 than any other age group in the country. Yeah. It's a good time to be in Encore.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know that isn't just true in the U.S. It's this age wave is true in most of the developed countries. You know that we've got this huge population of people 50, 65 plus, and what a resource. And so do you think you're kind of a role model for, you know, inspiration for other encores who want to start a business? Do you kind of see yourself in that way as an inspiration or a role model?
I would hope so, but that seeing myself as a role model kind of puts me up above others, and I don't see myself there. I see myself as right on the same level. I would probably better define myself as somebody who's been willing to look at my life in some very different ways, and and this happens to be the way that I'm doing it now, and that I would want to encourage others to do the same, to find for themselves what particular niche they might want to move into. So, I would hope that perhaps what I do inspires others. That would be then that means they take my idea and they run with it and make it their own, and that is how I feel.
Or they say, if Anne could do this, I can do this. Because I say that to people about, my book, Better, Smarter, Richer. It was actually published when I was 66. So I keep saying to people, if I can do this, you can do this.
It's empowering. It's empowering.
It's very empowering. And, and I'll say to people, what are you waiting for? Come on,
Right.
There is an end. And so, if you've had a dream or you've had a passion or you've had something that you've always thought maybe you wanted to do, go do it. All the stars are aligned for solopreneurship, encore entrepreneurship, success for people over 50, and the opportunities just absolutely abound. So,
would it be appropriate for me to ask you why you got into this particular kind of business?
Sure. Actually, I had been watching solos ever since I started my career. Early on, I had a CPA firm, and solos would come to me for business advice. They were, at that point, it was pretty much the creative group, the designers and writers and musicians and photographers. And, I would look for business advice to help them. I had a CPA firm, and I was thinking, they can't grow by the traditional business, because the traditional business teaches you how to hire employees, delegate, move away from doing the work of the business and managing the business itself, and that's not what these people want to do. Well, anyway, I'd watched this for a long time, and I absolutely could not find any written business advice. And as my career moved along and I found myself in different places and different situations, still kept watching solos. And in the early 2000s, after the Internet began to become as pervasive as it is now, I began to see how solos were using the Internet to be able to reach a broad audience and build a specialty that was not constrained by geographic location. And that made all the difference in how they worked. And so I really began paying attention. By that time I was working at the SBDC, and I began paying attention to what they were doing, how things were working. I began to write their stories down and look for similarities in things that they were doing that either brought them success or didn't bring them success. And I began to see that there were, these 7 basic principles that were coming together. And then when the economy turned down in 2008, we remember 2008 really well.
Oh, yes.
And I tell people I still have tire tracks. Our funding at our SBDC just got pulled. And we were told that the people who were funding us believed that the future growth in the economy was certainly going to happen with small business, but that they were cutting our funding 70%. And our DC director was just beside himself at the time, not trying to figure out what he was going to do with 70% less funding. And so he laid us all off. And I tell people at that point, my husband, who'd been retired for, about 7 or 8 years, was pretty excited because he was going, oh, goody, she's going to retire at last. and I said, I'm going to write my book. I think I have this together well enough to write my book. And I found a developmental editor. Her name is Julie Fast, and blessings to her. She helped me create the stories and the format of the book and the questions, and she guided me into a format. And she was She's a wonderful writer herself, and it was just such a blessing to